Welcome back to another episode of the Content Clubhouse podcast presented by The First Call, where I'm very pleased to be joined today by the self-proclaimed mayor of Tempo Town, Ashton Gaulin. Got to be one of the youngest creators, I think, in the golf space, Ashton. When I was first doing my research for this episode, I was like, wow, is he still in college or recently out of it? Like, I'm 26, so there's not a whole lot of people that make me feel old, but I got to admit, this was a little bit of that. But before we get into your story and what you've been up to be honest, there's really only one place to start. You might say that your journey as a golf creator was somewhat kick-started by a bladed wedge to the back of the head from Kevin Kisner. Explain.
Yeah, that's quite the incredible story. So, first shoot I ever had with Wilson starting of 2024. Obviously, Kevin Kisner was with Wilson. They had 2 or 3 pros out in Palm Springs for just one of their shoot days. Got to meet up with Kevin Kisner, which, by the way, is one of my favorite golfers of all time. Absolutely love that man. Just a genuine person. And we're filming some content, doing some close to the pin stuff, get up to the green. And we're like, all right, maybe we can see if kids can hit a flop shot over. So it was me and Ben Kruper. He's 2 or 3 inches taller than me. So I was like, but I'm still 6'1". And we're like, let's just pick the shortest guy, which was me. And he hits the first flop shot over my shoulder. Not even close to my body at all. And then he takes this just stab of a swing on the second one. And it looked so yippy in the video. I feel like when you're hitting a flop shot over someone, you're taking a full swing. You're either chunking it or you're hitting it 80 feet in the air. But it did not look like that. And just the noise it made off the back of my skull is still to this day just unreal.
Yeah, definitely. They talk about Gene Saracen's shot at them in the first match of the shot heard around the world. This one was heard, maybe not by you as you're regaining consciousness from it, but yeah, I mean, again, I'm kind of going through your content, and I remember I was like, wait, this is the same guy that posted the video of getting hit in the back of the head by Kevin Kisner, which you talk about him just being such an awesome dude, which he showed that there. I mean, super apologetic, got to be feeling so awkward, exactly. Oh my God, I just killed this kid. But that's pretty cool. So talking about this shoot with Kevin Kisner, you mentioned it being part of a Wilson partnership deal. Was that kind of one of the first of those that you'd done, be that a partnership shoot or certainly the first piece of content with a personality that big?
Yeah, that was beginning of 24 was I had been in the content space for 6 months to a year, and that was Wilson was my first brand deal that I actually signed a contract for, and that was the second week in January, so it was right at the start of the year. And just an incredible way to start off the year with Wilson. But no, the whole situation was handled incredibly by Kiz. I think if any person could blade one into the back of my head, I would choose him, just because he ran with it. He made a joke out of it. To kind of go further into the story, if you watch the video, the knock off my head, and then it's just complete silence for about 5 seconds, just dead silence, until Kiz finally breaks it with, "Is he dead?" So that 5 seconds, I was like, "Is my hearing gone? Did I lose my hearing? What's happening?"
Am I dead?
Kiz actually broke the silence because everybody else was dumbfounded at the fact that I just got domed. But yeah, it was quite the first trip with them, and it was a good first year, and I just recently signed a 2-year contract with them, and I'm excited to keep working with them in the future. So,
yeah, off to a running start. Well, we definitely want to dive into. I think that's a part of the content creation space that I think a lot of fans don't really understand at all. Is actually how these partnerships come to be. What do they look like? Kind of what all does that entail? But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about your content for those who may not be as familiar with it. On a scale from on one side being Dan Grieve, hardcore instruction training aids on one hand to Bob does sports on the other hand, trying to get Josh Allen drunk on a golf course. Like, I'd say you're probably closer to the former rather than the latter, right? Like a lot of more instruction based content. But in your own words, how would you describe the lane that you sort of occupy in the golf content space?
I think the best way to put it in like the most humble way I possibly can is like, I've gained a following off of having an aesthetically pleasing golf swing. And I do kind of push more towards the proper side of golf, where I'm not going out, getting drunk, all that stuff. I want to go out, show off my game, show off cool courses, just show off my personality, all that stuff. And if stuff like that with Bob Does Sports on the far end comes up, I wouldn't turn down an opportunity like that, because that sounds like a good time. But yeah, I think aesthetics is kind of where I sit right now, and just kind of pleasing the eye with a golf video is, I don't do a ton of instruction stuff, but that's probably the best way that I can put it, is aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. I mean, again, as you have the moniker Tempo Time, and tempo in that golf swing is something I'm super jealous of, and I'm sure most of your audience is as well. And that's one of the things that makes you a bit unique as a creator, right? Because there are a lot of these folks out here. You know, on a recent episode, we had Evan Thompson on, who's a very good golfer in his own right, chasing amateur golf dreams too. But you know, that's probably the minority, you know, you'd say. I mean, a lot of these folks are more so just having fun on the golf course and are a bit more relatable to your average golfer. But for you, you know, you played collegiately, which already makes you in the 1% of golfers. You're also a +2 handicap by the latest I could find anyway, or plus 1.9, assuming that
that's old. That's old. I'm probably going through winter. Probably right now, I'm probably right around a 0. When I was in college, I just was not putting handicaps because I just did not care. The handicap system in college means absolutely nothing unless you're playing with like leagues on the weekends or something like that.
Understandable. So you'd be giving me 2 fewer strokes, I guess, which is good to know.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, I mean, how much competitive golf are you still playing? I know as of last year, you're still playing in Michigan amateur events. Where's kind of the state of your competitive golf game right now, or is it now your focus more kind of on the content side of things?
I would say that I'm more focused on the content side of things. I was never really deep into the competitive side of golf. Like, I think my first real tournament, if you don't consider like playing in the summers every Wednesday as like a 12-year-old kid, my first real tournament was freshman year of high school. And I was like, okay, I'm hooked. So I grinded my butt off until I got offers from colleges to go D2 my junior year. And then COVID messed all that up, and I ended up going to play JUCO for 3 years, which I absolutely loved. The college competitive golf team is like the greatest dynamic of all time. And it's like you have 5, 6, 10 guys that are just together all of the time, because golf takes so much time to practice. You could be out on the golf course for 8 hours a day, and it's like everybody's so close. So I'd say the competitive side is starting to die out, just because I quit my college team. I dropped out of school. I was just kind of focusing on the content stuff for like, I gave myself like a time period. So I dropped out of school back in when the school year ended. So back in June, I spent the summer focusing on content. And then this winter has kind of been like building up ideas, stuff like that, traveling, just because I'm not in school. So that was like a big thing for me, was kind of taking that jump and seeing what I could do in a year. And if all things fail, hopefully not, I go back to school for a year and finish my degree, but I really, really don't want that to happen. Yeah, I'd say the competitive side is still there, but I do like focusing on the content more. Like I really enjoy talking to a camera, um, and just the people you meet and the fans, of course, are always so enthusiastic when you meet them, and it's such a cool space to be in. I love it.
Yeah. So again, one of my follow-up questions was going to be, well, is golf content creation your full-time job? But it sounds like not only is it, but you may have never had a full-time job previously to that. So you came right out of school then.
Yeah, so I worked part-time jobs pretty much since I could work, like back when I was like 15. My first full-time job, I guess I could say, is a golf content creator. I make like the amount of money that I consider to be full-time, and I'm putting, like, me dropping out of school was me telling myself that I'm not going to do this part-time. I'm going to put all my efforts towards it, and like spend a year like really pushing towards the content stuff, because when I was in school, it was like golf, school, girlfriend, family, friends. There was like 20 things that I was balancing, and it's like I just needed some things to go. So the first thing I did was quit my golf team. I was like, I'm not going pro. I've played my 4 years of college golf. I absolutely loved it. I don't need the fifth year type of thing. And that was also my first year at Saginaw Valley, where I transferred in, and just kind of a difficult thing to transfer in as a 21-year-old senior. So, but from there, I was like, I just need to keep getting rid of things until I can focus all of my energy on social media. So school and golf were the first things to go, and so far I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it.
Okay, not to be the old guy, but as a guy who had to tell his parents, yeah, mom and dad, I want to study sports media. Like, how did that conversation go with your parents about, like, yeah, I'm gonna really try this golf thing?
Yeah, so I am fortunate enough to have my parents support this entire thing, and they've supported all the stuff I've done in college as well. But the conversation with dad went great. He was super supportive. He loves all the content stuff. He actually, just this morning, he came into me talking to me about the Wesley Bryant missing like 4 tap-ins in their recent major cut video. Like, he's dove into this content space. And then my mom was a little bit more of like a tough fight, because she's all about get the degree, like get a job, do that stuff. But like, I think when she started to realize that paychecks started rolling in, I think that's when she kind of was like, oh, he can actually do this for a few years, if not a while. So I don't know. I think to her eyes, I think it was more that she just needed to see a lucrative side to it. And I think my biggest argument to her was I would rather, to throw out a random number, I'd rather make 20 grand in a year than spend 40 on school. So that's kind of was my whole argument to her. So she came around, though.
Clearly. I mean,
yeah.
we wouldn't be here if not. So shout out Mama Gaulin there. So
yeah, no, she's the best.
Well, that brings me to something we talked about the beginning, in terms of the lucrative side of it, the partnership side.
Yeah,
you can't really do this way of life kind of without it. So, do you have, obviously you have your partnership with Wilson with your based on your attire? We got some Sugarloaf Social Club on there. Shout out to those guys. So, tell us a little bit about how those partnerships came to be. I mean, I'm assuming they reached out to you, but just what does that look like?
So I feel like a lot of people don't really realize it, but it's fun to talk about. So like, I told you the Wilson one started in January of 24. That was my first year with them. But they reached out just straight through DM. And that was kind of at the end of 23. It was probably October-ish is when they reached out. I was also getting reached out to by other club brands to bring on like a full club sponsor. And it was all through DM, which I found interesting as someone who's kind of new to this. I was like, it feels like unofficial, from a DM from a company. But no, always receiving those messages is always like eye-opening to a golfer kid, because you're like, am I going to get free clubs? Like, this is so cool. And I could never imagine that it's turned into what it's turned into. I mean, it's working with a billion-dollar company. It's incredible. The past year and a half has been amazing with them. Just the support that they give their creators, the stuff that they're pushing forward. It's amazing. And then for the Sugarloaf stuff, I was working with a guy. His name is Sam at Wilson. He left Wilson end of the year in 24. So towards the end of my contract, we re-signed with him for Wilson, and then he was leaving to head to Sugarloaf. So he just recently became the social media manager for Sugarloaf Social Club. And he, like a month before 2025 was going to start, he texted me. He's like, dude, I would love to bring you here with me. Like, I think you'd love it. So that's kind of how that connection started. I was aware of Sugarloaf just because I've always kind of been into that style side of golf where it's like a little different type of stuff. And they popped up on my radar, like I said, with Sam being there, and we worked it out quick and got the deal started before 2025. So that's my first clothing contract that I've ever signed, and it's all just so new to me. It's so cool to think that doing what I love, which is golf, every day can actually be like a thing. It's incredible.
So along the line of partnerships, I guess, for lack of a better way of asking, how much time are you spending amid your creative process, amid doing the daily things that you need to do to make a living? How much time are you spending making sure you're fulfilling those business obligations for Wilson or for Sugarloaf? Like, does that add a lot of work to your plate at all?
I think the hardest thing that I've dealt with is like going into this most recent summer. So starting back in November, or not summer, winter. Obviously I live in Michigan, so it gets cold in October and we don't play golf until April, sometimes May. So that being what it is, it was my first winter where I had obligations to post for companies. That made it extremely difficult. So I was building up content and kind of slowing down my posts almost all the way into like September, and just kind of trying my best to have like honestly, any video you've seen of me today is either like range content where it's 30 degrees out and I'm freezing or it's content that was filmed back in September of 2024. So that's like how old some of the content is that I've kind of saved up. And I think that's the biggest struggle I've had. So like, for example, a contract will look like 3 posts a month collaborated with the company for X amount of dollars type of thing. And then that goes on for like a year. So you're required like 36 posts for the year. So each month you just try and get the best content you can for them. But winter has been a huge struggle, and I've been trying to travel as much as I can, but obviously money stuff is difficult. Traveling right now is extremely expensive, but won't get into that. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I've struggled with. But if it's summer, I mean, the posts are relatively low in like a number standpoint. Like you don't really it's not a ton of content. Like I say 24 posts a year. That's not a lot. Like to go out and film a range video or film something quick if they need something for new wedges or some of their new hats or stuff like that. So I think if weather permits it, just me being in Michigan, it is fairly simple to go out and film brand content. But this winter has been a big struggle.
For sure, I can imagine. Kind of along those lines, and I'm sure it varies from partnership to partnership, but would you say you more or less have pretty much free reign to decide, okay, here's how I'm going to incorporate Wilson into this? Or like, okay, if they want me to show off a hat, like I'll just wear the hat, but otherwise I have full creative control over what I'm doing? Or do some of your partnerships kind of require you to read some lines or follow some directions?
You know, one thing I talk about with my agent is I'm very specific about who I work with. I do want it all to be natural. Like anyone I've worked with, I don't think I've ever. Actually, just yesterday was the first ad I ever posted with Live Golf, and that was like the first time I've ever been told to say like a specific thing. But it was like something short. It wasn't like bad. It was just like it was the first time I'd been told to say something, because I like to keep it very natural. Where if it's clothing or clubs, the comments kind of more drive the ad. So like if somebody's noticing that I'm playing the new Wilson driver, that's kind of like the comments just keep building off of that, and it's very natural. I've never actually made a Wilson video, and I've been working with them for a year. I've never made a video where I've like showed the ball or showed the club or maybe for like a what's in the bag or something like that. But all in all, it's been pretty comments driven and just very natural. And I love that aspect. If you can make content that doesn't look like an ad, people are going to watch it more. It just feels better to the watcher. So I kind of focus on working with brands that are okay with that. Like for Sugarloaf, for example, I just kind of wear their clothes in all my videos. And if we do brand posts during the month, it's just very natural and something that they would post as well. They're a very aesthetic page. So
yeah, perfect fit.
It's great. The people I've worked with in the past have been great about keeping it natural, which I enjoy.
Cool. Well, a couple of quick ones before I let you go. And maybe the Kevin Kisner situation is answer A to this. So if that's the case, maybe think of another one, because we've already talked about it. But what are some of the coolest experiences you've had in this content creation journey so far, where you might have thought to yourself, like, wow, how did me posting videos of my golf game bring me to this place?
Yeah. I think the biggest one that stands out is the Good Desert Open. Like coming from somebody who's watched Garrett Clark since he was doing trick shots in his backyard, like getting to meet them, play with them, win their tournament, like it was incredible. And like the fans, like I said, the fans are probably the best thing about the content space, because it's a very young audience, people that are around our age, just with so much support for the YouTube golf space and like all of that content stuff. I think that was probably the highlight of the career so far, was winning that tournament and just experiencing being able to play with crowds like that. And I mean, I've never hit a tee shot with let alone 5 people watching me, let alone like 2,000. So it's insane. It's such a cool thing that they're doing. And I really do think that the live stuff with content creators is just going to keep being pushed, which I would absolutely love to be a part of, just because it's so awesome to think that, like, not average, but like scratch golfers and like people around zero handicaps can actually make a living doing this stuff because people are entertained, you know?
Yeah. And that's the whole kind of impetus behind this show, is just realizing like you guys almost are, to an extent, golf at this point. At least the way it's consumed these days. You talk about the growing audience and the younger audience. I mean, that's not going away. I mean,
Yeah.
you obviously pay attention to pro golf. I certainly do, but it's the rabid fandom for the stuff like the Good Goods and for those tournaments and the Creator Classics that really are turning people's heads. And so it's just awesome to hear that take from somebody like yourself that's in the middle of it all.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's lowering the age for who's watching golf, like by magnitudes. Like it's not even close. Like the average golf watcher, like 6 years ago, was like 50, and then now you're seeing it drop into the 30s. In the people are actually watching golf now, which never could have been imagined before COVID. It's like unreal.
Yeah.
Such a crazy world to be in the middle of. I love it.
Absolutely. Well, what's next for you, Ashton? What obviously people can find you on socials at Ashton_Gaulin on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. You're on all the big ones. But what's something we can expect to see from you here soon?
You know, I think a lot of collaborations going into the next year. I would love to just, I'm big on meeting new people. I would love to work with new people. Just really focus on the YouTube stuff going forward. I think the YouTube channel is going to be a big push for me this summer. Really focusing on just the long form content and showing off my personality, because I don't really do that much. That's why I love these podcasts so much, because I'm able to talk for an hour. I don't do that much on short forms. People don't really know who I am, but the YouTube is where you can kind of find that and see where my personality kind of seeps through. And I really think that's where I want to end up. So yeah, that's the goal for this year.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Thanks again for coming on, and good luck with everything, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Nathan.